All right, guys, we'll get started. We are in Numbers. Is that too loud? It's all right. A little loud? It is a little loud. A little echoey. We are in the book of Numbers, chapter 17. All right, let's try that. That was a little loud. So a couple of weeks ago, we did a quick review because we had missed at Christmas and everything, and then we talked about the building in Honduras. So just a quick review again where we are. We're in the book of Numbers, and on your notes I put what's going on. Genesis is the beginning. We had the creation, the flood, the fall, the fall, the flood. Everybody moves to Egypt. And then Exodus, Moses goes to Egypt, gets everybody out of Egypt. And on their first year anniversary from leaving Egypt, they build the tabernacle. That was the end of Exodus. They build the big tent thing. And they've been gone 1 year. And then we did Leviticus. We kind of blew through Leviticus, I think, in one night. It only covered 1 month of time. There's 3 kinds of laws in the Old Testament, not just in Leviticus, but throughout: moral, ceremonial, and civil. Moral laws have to do with right and wrong. Ceremonial has to do with how to worship God. And civil laws have to do with how to interact with people. So a moral law would be, thou shalt not, lie? That's not one of the 10 cowboy commandments, is it? Lie? We can get away with that one. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt only have one God. Things like that. Those are moral laws. God's morals never change. And then ceremonial laws are like all the sacrificial system. Remember, you have to kill a bull if you sin intentionally or unintentionally. And civil law is how to get along. If your neighbor's cow wanders into your yard and you kill it, you owe him a cow. Things like that. But they lived with all 3 laws intertwined. And so when you did something, you would end up breaking 3 aspects of the law. That's why when Jesus did something against the law, the Pharisees just couldn't believe it because it was just, oh my gosh. Today, we don't live that way. We have God's law and then we have civil law. And they don't mix, right? Because we have separation of church and state. And that was not George Washington. Do y'all know who did that? Who coined that term? I don't. It wasn't George Washington, but later on. Anyway. Do what? Oh, so we don't. If you run the red light, that's breaking a civil law. You don't get reprimanded at church, right? And then if you do something immoral, you don't go to jail unless it's a civil law. So you can lie, which would be against God, right? But you don't get a ticket. So we have a pretty good separation. They did not. Which laws did Jesus fulfill? Ceremonial and ceremonial for sure. Which one does not also apply to us? Which one does not apply to us? 1, 2, or 3?
Civil. They're civil.
Right, they're civil. I should have said that backwards. So Jesus fulfilled the ceremonial laws. We no longer have to sacrifice things. We no longer have to worship God according to the Old Testament laws, which is a good thing. Moral laws never go away. God is the same today as he is forever, so he has the same right and wrong as he did back then. Civil laws, they change with culture, right? We have a different set of civil laws than they did, all right? All right, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, then we got into the book of Numbers, which is the next book, the 4th book. Chapters 1 through 10, again, is just laws. They ordered a census. They counted everybody. They ordered the camps. Remember, now we've got the tent in the middle, and they ordered all the 12 tribes and gave them names and numbers and flags and said, this is your area. And then they talked about how to become pure, which was the sacrificial stuff. And then in chapter 10, verse 11, they're actually going to move from the very first time. They're going to move from Mount Sinai. They're going to pack their tent up, and they're going to move. They've been there over a year, about a year and 4 months, 3 months, something like that. So now they're going to pack up and start heading. Where's their goal to go? Do y'all know? The Promised Land, which is up north. They're going to head up north. It's not a long trip, a couple hours, whatever. It's not a far trip. It's not a big deal. We're going to go into the Promised Land, and we're going to take the land that God gave us, right? Y'all ready? Did it work out that way? Didn't work out that way. Chapter 11, Moses is kind of not really complaining, but people are needing Moses left and right all day, every day. He's spending time messing with people. His father-in-law says, hey, you need some helpers. He gets some helpers. And then the people are complaining about not getting meat because they were living on that white crumbly stuff called manna, and they were tired of eating bread every day. And they said, we want meat. Did God give them some meat? He gave them a bunch of quail, and they gorged themselves, and then he made them choke to death on it, right? So that title of that lesson was, Be Careful What You Ask For. Chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron, they're all brothers and sisters. Miriam and Aaron attack Moses. Do y'all remember why they attacked Moses? Yes, but do you know what the reason was? Moses got a new wife, and they didn't like her. And they're like, we can do what he does. Anyway, so they were jealous, correct. But the thing that started it was they got a new wife. Miriam gets leprosy. Moses prays for her, and she gets healed. Chapter 13, they're getting close to the Promised Land. They send spies into the Promised Land. They are gone 40 days, and they come back, and they're like, let's go. Y'all ready? Is that what they said? No, they said, we don't want to go. Why? Because there's big people over there. Right? And we had a whole lesson on giants and the Nephilim or something like that, right? And we said there really is giants, and there still is giants in the world. Remember, everybody's a giant to me. It's a relative term. So there were two guys that were ready to go, Joshua and Caleb. What happened to the ones that didn't want to go, the spies? They didn't make it. They all had a unhappy ending. And then chapter 14, God curses them and says, you know what? Since y'all don't have faith to go into the Promised Land, it's going to be a while before you get there. None of you generation will ever see it. Your kids will, but you won't. So he curses them for 40 years because they were there for 40 days. Mm-hmm. So we'll look forward to that in 40 years, right? Chapters 15 through 25 is 10 chapters, which covers the 40 years of wandering in Numbers. So this is a great little reference for you to kind of know where to go to read about what's going on. So chapters 15, 25, they are now in the 40-year wandering period. They were on their way, but got turned around. Chapter 15 is just various laws on offerings and sin offerings and violating the Sabbath. Do y'all remember what happens when you violate the Sabbath? Remember that guy that was out there picking up sticks on the Sabbath? Do y'all remember what they did to him? They killed him, for violating the Sabbath. And then we talked about tassels. Remember he said to put little tassels on your garment to remind you of to not pick up sticks on Sunday, right? Should have put that picture of that guy on all their walls. Show a little stick figure picking up sticks. Anyway, God takes it serious in the old days. Will he kill us today if we work on the Sabbath? That was a different law back then, right? A ceremonial type law. Chapter 16, Korah's rebellion. This is where we left off last time. Do y'all remember Korah and the gang? Korah's rebellion. He got the group of people and said, well, we want to be priests too. We're just as good as Moses. They were rebelling against Moses and Aaron and Miriam. Moses said, you know what? Okay, y'all want to be priests? That's good. Go out and get your little pot. Y'all remember this? Make a fire in your pot and present it to God, and let's see who he chooses. And then that night before Moses went to bed, he said, hey, God, don't take anything. Reject their offerings. So the next morning, they all show up with their pots, on their little burning pots. And what does God do to their little group? He catches them on fire. Yeah, they die. And then they pick up all the pots off the ground that were copper pots, and they mold them and cover the altar and as a remembrance. Don't do this. People complain and die. A whole nother group complains again after he kills all those people. And they also start dying by a plague. And Aaron gets one of those pots and runs out into the crowd and stops God's plague from just wiping them out. And the death wave stops on Aaron. So good thing he was standing in front of that line, right? Wouldn't you hate to be the guy that was right there? Yeah. Anyway, well, that's the story. Okay, so guess where chapter we're on now? 17. Lots happened. A lot of little things. Okay, so now we're going to read the story about Aaron's rod. We'll answer some questions, and then we're going to do chapter 20. We'll answer some questions. So find 17 in your book. I'm going to read the chapter, and then we'll talk about it. So this is Aaron's staff or rod, or I don't know, maybe your book has a little title difference. But Number 17, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, this is after all that happened, right? Speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each father's house, all the leaders, according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod. And you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. For there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. So how many heads are there? 12 tribes, 12 houses, 12 rods. Aaron's name is one of them. Each guy wrote it on there. Then, verse 4, then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony where I meet with you. So that's in the big tent outside the room that has the testimony, which is the Ark of the Covenant. That's the golden ark. Don't go in there. He says, we're going to place them in front of the tabernacle. And it shall be, verse 5, that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against you. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave him a rod apiece, for each leader according to the father's houses, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. Verse 7. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, had produced blossoms, and yielded ripe almonds. Then Moses brought out all of the rods from before the Lord to all the children of Israel, and they looked, trying to see whose name it is, and each man took his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me. Otherwise what? They die. So thus did Moses, just as the Lord had commanded him, so he did. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Whoever even comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Surely we all utterly die. Okay. So what is a rod? What do you think? Just a piece of stick or something. It's probably wood. So you think it was a miracle that it sprouted? Okay. It's not a trick stick. All right. So number one, what did God want from each tribe? A rod, right? A stick. From each of the tribes, 12 tribes. Where should they be placed? In the covenant, in the tabernacle, in front of around the tent, right? Inside the tent, but around the inner tent, right? And what's going to happen? Verse 5. What does God say? What will happen? Yeah. The one that he what? Chooses. So you remember all this rebellion, and I should have emphasized that. We just got done with all this Korah rebellion, and they set him on fire. There was even a group that he opened the earth, and they all fell in and died, and he closed it up. You got all these people rebelling. Miriam and Aaron, they want to be in charge. Everybody wants to be in charge. So God says, you know what? We're going to see who's in charge. Go get a stick, put them in the tent, and whichever one grows, those people are going to be in charge. No questions asked. Right? So number 8, verse 8, which one actually changed? Which rod? No kidding. Right? Isn't Aaron the priest? Isn't Aaron Moses' main guy? Yes. And then what did Moses do with it after it changed? Put it back up and said, whose name is on this stick? Should that get their attention? You know, if I think I'm entitled and I think that I don't need Aaron and I think I can do this on my own, and he comes and gets my stick and takes it in and it comes back just as dead as it was, but Aaron's comes back, maybe I'm like, well, maybe Aaron's the guy. Right? I mean, it should work. Does it, you think? For a few hours. Yeah. And then 12 and 13, why would they die? Why are they saying, oh, we're definitely going to die? Why do y'all think that? Why are they saying that? What'd you say? Their stick wasn't chosen. They, I think, now know, or they're claiming to know, that they don't have the right to be in there. They're like, whoever goes in the tabernacle is going to die. It ain't me except Aaron. So they're kind of realizing that it ain't them. We hope it doesn't work. So look at here's some good questions. So we know the story, so those are the facts. So what, right? What does it mean to us? Why did God order all of this to happen in verse 5? What was the point of the rods? Ma'am? To teach a lesson. Yes. What is the lesson that he is trying to teach the people? Stop complaining. Look what verse 5 says. I will rid myself of the what? The complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against who? Moses. Which is God. But he's actually protecting Moses. Because who do all the people complaining to? Well, every time. And Moses goes outside on his porch and he's like, God, what am I going to do with these people? And Moses calls the people, that's your people. And God calls Moses, that's your people. like yeah, no, that's your kid. They both do that. But God is tired of his people complaining to who? Moses. So we're going to put this to bed. You're going to bring a stick. Anybody that thinks they're anything, put your stick in the pile, and whoever stick's chosen, the rest of y'all go home. Because we just ended that other Korah rebellion thing. Okay, so that's why he has ordered all this. Now, here's a question that we've got to start looking at our lives. What is the difference? So they were complaining, but what is the difference in complaining about a leader and holding them accountable? So I'm trying to get you to see, does that mean Moses should have been able to just do whatever he wanted without anyone questioning him? You see, because we live in a different world, don't we? We don't have a dictator. We don't have that. We vote on everything. We live in a democracy. We think we have a say-so in everything, right? So we have a completely different culture. Does the Bible teach accountability? Yeah? So what if Moses said everybody needs to sacrifice their firstborn son? And they're all like, okay, right? That would be going against God's law. So what would should they rebel then? Should hold him accountable. You see the difference? So what is the difference in complaining and holding someone accountable? The condition of the person's heart. The motive behind it. Y'all agree with that? Complaining is usually about self. Holding accountable is holding to a standard. So I want you to think about your life in church. And this is nothing about me or our church, but just think about your experiences in church in all of your life. Have you ever complained about church? Every hand should go up. Yeah? So were you complaining, or were you really seeing something that wasn't being done according to the God's word or the Bible? Do you see the difference? So that's where we have to do. Even as pastors, I'll have to figure that out, because I can complain a lot too. I get to complain, right? But we have to be careful about the complaining, because that is a selfish motive versus, you know what? What they're doing is not right. Is that different? That is even a different way of handling it. Correct. Correct. That's right. So then I kind of kept thinking about this idea, myself and just experience. I used to be a complainer. Do you think there is a relationship between the amount of complaining a person does and the amount of praying they do? What do you think the relationship is? Complete opposite, isn't it? That's right. So you think about, look at your life and your experiences and anything that maybe you were complaining about. If it's in church, think about where you are in that situation with God. Because most of the time when we're complaining about something, we're not looking at God, are we? There's a complete inverse relationship. And that's what these people are doing. Weren't they trying to take over? Like they wanted to be it. They weren't praying to God. They thought they had some deal with him, right? Next question is, out of this fact, does God protect his leaders? I hope so, right? We all hope so. He also does that too. That's right. So does God protecting Moses? Why did he say he was going to do this? Because he was tired of hearing the people complain to Moses and of him. So we're going to come back to that question in a minute. I'm kind of setting this up for the big picture. So does God protect his leaders? Yes. Do you think there's a relationship between complaining and praying? Yes, it's inverse, right? What's the difference in complaining and holding accountable? It's our heart. And why did God order all this? Because he's tired of the what? Complaining. All right. Then we get to chapter 18. It's just more laws and things, the duties and tithes and offerings and support of the Levites. And you can go read chapter 18. Again, it's not really applicable to us. We don't operate that way. But it does come up to where it does give support to the way we give church tithes to the church. New Testament church is completely different, but this is where we get a lot of the ideas from it. But this is not law in church today. It's just this is where it comes from, if that makes sense, our ideas. But New Testament church, you are not, remember we talked about, I'm trying to think of the word, not commanded, or do you have to tithe to go to heaven? No. You see what I'm trying to say? But would Jesus tell you to? Yeah. So that's what we're talking about in Paul on Sunday mornings. We have the freedom of salvation through faith, but that doesn't relieve you of the duties of it, but it doesn't make it a requirement. Okay. So that's what 18 is. These are requirements. Duties, offering, support of the Levites. The Levites weren't allowed to own land. Everybody else supported the priest. Chapter 19 is more laws of purification of the unclean. Just as an example, I saw a funny one in here, but I didn't write it down. Let's see. There was one about if a guy dies in your tent or something. It's very not applicable to today. I don't remember if somebody touches the dead person, they have to clean for 7 days. Verse 11, you have to wash your hands on the third day, right? We don't do all that stuff. It's not applicable. Unclean and clean doesn't work for us anymore. It doesn't matter to us. Jesus fulfilled all of those things. Again, we're going to talk about that Sunday again. So Jesus fulfilled all of the unclean laws. All right, y'all ready for the last year of do you know we just did 39 years? Yeah. So over the 39 years, what do you think the people did? Complained and rebelled and got caught on fire and had earthquakes. They didn't have just a great 39 years, but that was 39 years and a few chapters, right? So we are now in chapter 20, begins the final year of the wandering. Yeah, the curse or whatever. We're in the last of the, so we're in year 39. We're in the last year, and let's see how the year begins. Verse 20. So I call it 5 tragedies. 5 things happened in their last year. And, rather quickly, but all right, y'all ready? I'm going to read it. It's great stuff. It's actually sad. Verse 1, Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Didn't say why, but she died, the sister. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, If only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into the wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. It's not the land of milk and honey. Verse 6, so Moses and Aaron plot. So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. So where do they go every time they have a problem? They go to God. Verse 7, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, and speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So what was he supposed to do to the rock? Speak. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. Verse 12, Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, Because you did not believe me, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. He sealed his deal, didn't he? This was the water of Meribah or something, because the children of Israel contended with the Lord, and he was hallowed among them. Verse 14, Now Moses sent messengers from, this is a different day, Now Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, You know all the hardships has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers. Verse 16, When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent the angel and brought us up out of Egypt. Now here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please let us pass through your country. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink water from your wells. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right or left until we have passed through your territory. Please? 18. Then Edom said to him, No, you shall not pass through my land, lest I come out against you with the sword. Nice guy. So the children of Israel said to him, Well, we will go by the highway, and if I or my livestock drink any of your water, then I'll pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. Verse 20, then he said, You shall not pass through. So Edom came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through its territory, so Israel turned away from him. Verse 22. Now the children of Israel, the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land, saying, 24. Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, for Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. So Moses did just as the Lord commanded, and they went up to the mountain in the sight of all the congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. Now when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. Man, what happened in verse chapter 20? What happened to all the leaders? Dang. So in verse 1, who died? The sister. Miriam's the one that sang the song as they were going through the Red Sea. I remember they parted the Red Sea and we got Miriam's song. Miriam was there the whole time. She was a good girl. She just got carried away that one time when she wanted Moses' job. Right? And she got leprosy and learned her lesson. Did she make it to the promised land? 2 through 6, what's the people complaining about? And what are they saying? We shouldn't have left Egypt. You brought us out here. Have they said that before? Hey, no wonder Moses is mad.
You know, but the truth is, if this has been 40 years, the majority of them
Man, forgot.
wouldn't even have remembered being in
Yeah,
Egypt.
this is at the end of 40 years.
Yeah, so I mean,
Very good.
babies would have been 40 years old.
Very good point. Remember, that whole generation was supposed to die.
Yeah.
You're a good point.
Complaining
These are a new group.
wasn't even in Egypt.
All right, I'll take your defense. Other than that, I don't want nothing to do with them.
Well, no, I think they're stupid. They still want to go back to Egypt. They weren't ever there.
I know it. Yeah, they weren't even there. Oh, you think it was bad. Yeah, you think it was good. Uh-huh. So they're complaining about no water. Verse 8, what was Moses supposed to do to the rock? Golly. And what did he do in verse 11? He beat it up. Twice? 3 times? Twice? Yeah. Did he speak?
He didn't speak to the rock.
Who did he speak to? To the rebels. And then so he did not do what God said. And what was Moses' punishment? Verse 12. How does that make you feel if you were Moses? Not only that, but I done all this. No kidding. Man, I'm saying it for him, and I wasn't even there. I done fought with Pharaoh, done messed with these people for 40 years. I got 1 year to go. No, he never did. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, right here, verse 14. Now Moses sent messengers. They got to get across this area. I'd been like, you're on your own, man. Care? I'm staying right here. It's great. It's scary. He was mad. I mean, I'm mad, and I'm just reading a story. I know. He calls them rebels, and he's yelling at them, and he. Yeah.
But don't you think he know? I mean, they were told 40 years, right? They knew
Yes,
that.
they knew it. You know he's got to get close.
So they have to know we're almost there, and you people can't shut up.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times has God supplied exactly what we needed, and y'all, we've got 1 year left.
I
y'all
know
can't
it.
shut up.
I know it.
I would have left them and told y'all wait right here. I'll be back.
He didn't know what his punishment was going to be, but that's a good point. You know what? It's that way. That's what I would have done with Edom. Oh, he said y'all could pass. Go ahead. Okay, so Moses gets his punishment for just a simple disobedience. God still made the water.
I know, but don't you figure God at this point, it's like you've done everything for 39 years, and now you screw up?
It's tough. Okay, verse 17. What did Moses ask the king of Edom to do? Just wanted to pass through. I don't want to go around. I just want to come through, man. So remember the history. I didn't remember. I had to look it up. But Edom, he's related to Esau. So if you go back to Jacob and Esau, Jacob was the chosen one. Esau was not the chosen one. So every time there's a split in lineage, Isaac and Ishmael. Remember that with Abraham? You had Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac got the good stuff. Ishmael didn't get the good stuff. Jacob and Esau. Jacob got the good stuff. Esau didn't. And it's like when you didn't get the good, when you were on the bad side, it was bad. Well, guess who Edom come from? Esau's kid, right? So that's why Moses says, hey, brother. Edom's like, no, we ain't brothers, dude. You ain't coming through here. So you can see both ways. Moses is like, you're part of us, right? Jacob is Israel. Jacob changed his name to Israel, and this is Jacob's older brother. Remember? And so it's it's like, we're long lost. Come on, brother. Let us through here. And Edom's like, nah, you come through here, I'm going to kill you. Right? And that's what he does. So that's where that comes from. So verse 20, did the king allow it? No. What did God say about Aaron in 24? Time's up. Yeah, your time's up, right? But at least he gave him a successor, his son. And I don't know how to say that. Eleazar. Yeah. But Aaron's time was up. And why was Aaron not able to go to the promised land? The same rock issue. He said it. You were there too when you made that water. You didn't say, hey, Moses, calm down, dude. So Aaron went down for the same thing. And died. What a day. Took him up on the mountain, took his clothes, and left him on the mountain. I mean, kind of sad. Who took his place? His son, which is fine, which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him at this point.
Yeah, but to me at that point, it's like, if God's ready for me, let's go.
Yeah, no
It's in your
kidding.
hand.
Yeah. Aaron's a good guy. He got no complaints. We know where he is. I mean, he did everything he's supposed to do, except he failed. What does that tell y'all about great leaders?
They're not perfect.
They fail. Yeah. Okay, questions. Why did Miriam die?
She wasn't going to make it to the promised.
She wasn't making it to the promised land, right? We don't know why she died, but that's why she died. Disobedience. Why did Aaron die? Disobedience. And why did Moses receive punishment? Disobedience. What was another time that Moses almost died? Way back, Exodus.
When he married, didn't do the circumcision. Oh, yeah. I knew that was.
Aaron and Miriam wanted to get him for marrying that girl, but way back in the day, okay, God tells him at the burning bush, you're going to go to Egypt, save my people. He's like, eh. So he goes home and tells his wife, hey, we're going to go to Egypt, pack. I mean, we don't know that. But he goes home and gets her, and they're on their way to Egypt, and he falls deathly ill, and God's about to kill him. It's like God remembered this thing, and that thing was his kid wasn't circumcised because he wasn't really an Israelite. He wasn't living in Egypt. He had married this Midianite, which was a non-Christian, non-God-fearing person, right? And so the wife, Zipper, you remember her? Zipporah, anyway, she decided, she knew, she was probably the one against it anyway, and then she comes out, does the deed to the son, and then they all pack up and keep moving. Y'all remember that story? Crazy. He was going to die because they didn't do this deal. So now y'all go back to Paul and Galatians. Y'all see how serious they're taking this? They know that Moses almost died over it. Exodus. Okay. Can disobedience have physical consequences? I'm not talking about running a red light and getting sideswiped. I'm talking a spiritual disobedience. Disobeying God have a physical consequences according to chapter 20. Yes. Well, that's true too. Yeah, that's a civil consequence. Yeah, so we're talking spiritual consequences. If we are disobedient to God, can it have a physical consequence? Absolutely. Have you ever thought about that? Well, they tell that to Job too. Yeah, that's right. So they thought when they were ill that they had something in their life. Very true. That's the way they thought. That's right. Which we know today is maybe, maybe not. But it's not a one-to-one, meaning just because you're sick doesn't mean you've been disobedient. And just because you're disobedient don't make you sick. But can it make, God can, it can get your attention in multiple ways. So think about that. Maybe back in your life, think about, was there times when you weren't doing what God has called you to do? Maybe not being disobedient, but you're just not following Him. You're not doing it. You're not doing His ways. You're not thinking His ways and thoughts. And where that leads, He will get your attention. Hopefully you survive it long enough to get back to where you're supposed to be. Think about the story, New Testament story, Ananias and Sapphira. Do y'all remember them two knuckleheads? It was a married couple. There was a married couple, Ananias and Sapphira. And in the New Testament, they sell some land and they go to Peter and like, oh, look, we sold this land and take our money and I don't think that's what you sold your lamp. Oh, yeah, it was. You died. Yeah. And then the wife comes in and says the same thing, and she dies too. But anyway. So my question is, how come they didn't get a second chance? You know? How come I get a second chance when I lie? They didn't get a second chance. So you're not guaranteed all that stuff. All right, tie it all together. So let's go back to the question I asked you about Moses when I said, does God protect his leaders? Yes. So tying it all together, so even though God protects his leaders, and you can not just say leaders, but anyone following him, you know, we're all called to be priests in the New Testament, but Old Testament, even though God protects his leaders, are they exempt from consequences of disobedience? They're not special, are they? I sure want to be, not me, I sure want Moses to be special. I'm sure Moses may have felt special. Hey, you talked to me in a burning bush. I crossed the desert and freed 1 million people from Pharaoh, had him killed and all of their people, walked through the water, made quail, made manna, made water come out of a rock, and now you're telling me I can't make it to the promised land because I missed something? You understand? He's not special. He's complaining about what? I couldn't hear. He's not complaining. Right. Right. It's his job. That's what he's called to do. That's right. That's right. That's right. Not that day. Yeah. Yeah, 40 years. But that day he was done.
You know, Chris, this reading that we've been doing will help you to remember to walk that straight.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, this scares me to death. No kidding. I'm not special, but yeah, so does God protect his leaders? Are they exempt from disobedience? So let's replace that word leaders with does Jesus protect those that follow him? Yes? Sure. Are you exempt from consequences of disobedience? No. But sometimes we forget that, don't we? We think we're special, or he'll forgive us.
Back to the forgiveness of sin. You're forgiven, but
Right.
you don't escape the consequences
Well,
of your decision.
They're physical consequences, correct. Yes. So sin is forgiven, but physical consequences will still be there, correct. Like if you do something bad, that is forgiven in the spiritual world, but it has a physical consequence.
Well, I
That's
mean,
right.
don't you think it's kind of Moses? I'm sure was forgiven.
Sure, right.
But
But it still didn't get off the hook.
Yeah.
Right, correct. So you still said you're just going to look across the river and you ain't going to make it. Mhm. Correct. And that's another issue also. So we can maybe want to fight for Moses. Man, how come, God? How come you didn't let Moses cross the river? And God's like, wasn't ever my point to let him cross the river. Like, wasn't his job. Whose job is it to get him across the river? Joshua. Right? The guy that wanted to go kill all the people the first time. Joshua's fixed. That's the next book in the Bible, isn't it, coming up? Yeah. Joshua's the one that leads them across the river. It's not Moses' job. So that's very good. And we're all like, poor Moses. Moses is like, I'm ready to be done. Yeah. Right. That's right. That's right. So let's think about that and put it in real perspective. Our success as ministry, our success of doing God's work has no earthly success. Help me out here. What we think is successful is not what God says is successful.
You may plant the seed, but you may never reap the harvest.
You may never see it. That's faith, right? What did you say, Jim? Correct. So was Moses successful in what God had called him to do? He did. He got him there. That's right. So he did it. Was John the Baptist successful in what his ministry was, getting people ready for Jesus? Yeah. And what happened to him? He got his head cut off. You see the difference? Was Paul successful in his ministry? Yes. What happened to him? He's crucified upside down or something like that, right? So we just equate success the wrong way. So I believe when God calls you to something, whatever that is, it's usually not going to have a happy ending for you. But it has a great ending for the kingdom. Right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you don't have that physical happy ending, but the kingdom is a great happy ending. Yes. And that's the faith part. And that's what we read about in Hebrews. Oh, by the way, I was reading a book the other day. Do y'all know Martin Luther? Have you heard that name? Martin Luther thinks Paul wrote Hebrews. Remember we talked about Hebrews and I said I think Paul wrote it? Well, he thinks Paul wrote it too. So, any questions about tonight? No? So are y'all going to tread lightly and be more obedient? For at least till Sunday. We're all going to start talking to rocks. Not hitting rocks with a stick. it does make me think, it makes me think, man, you know, I want to say all the time, I'll do all this for you, I'll do this and this and this, and what do you think God's like? And? Right? But we all say that same thing, you know, so anyway. All right, guys, let me pray for us, and we'll call it a night. Dear Lord, again, thank you for tonight, and thank you for your word. And Lord, just help us understand the definition of obedience. Help us understand the heart that you want in us, the difference in a have to and we just want to please you. Lord, help us not complain against you by complaining against situations. Lord, if we trust that you are in charge, help us not complain about the situation. Help us understand and trust that you are in charge. But also help us understand the truth and look for false things and not fall into traps and be led astray by the wrong things. Help us understand and navigate the difference in complaining and holding people accountable. And Lord, help us follow and be obedient and do your will and put ourselves aside and not worry about the outcomes, but just trust you moving forward no matter what. We thank you for Moses and Aaron, Miriam, and all the things that they've done to accomplish your will. Lord, we thank you for their obedience. Lord, we only wish that we could be as obedient as them. Teach us how to do that. And we ask that you watch over us and protect us and keep us on your path. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, have a good week. See you Sunday.
Somebody is sick. I don't know if a child was